Genae Girard is an amazing individual, and she is a plaintiff for the ACLU. Together, they are fighting the U.S. Patent Office for granting one laboratory a patent on the breast cancer genes, BRAC1 and BRAC2. She has been, again, interviewed by 60 Minutes, you name it, and will, of course, give you her website as well, offtherackbook.com. She goes over the monopoly on genetic tests that identify the presence of the genes, all of it. You think they're just patenting soybeans or potatoes. No, they're doing it with humans. And tell us your story. Tell us what they did to you and where this lawsuit's going, Genae. Thank you for joining us.
Sure. Thanks for having me, Alex. I really appreciate it. Essentially, I was diagnosed at age 36, and I had some breast cancer in my family. And so I decided to go ahead and get the genetic test because I did test positive for breast cancer. So I ended up testing positive for the BRCA2 gene. What that means is that I have a 5 times higher likelihood than your average woman of getting breast cancer and also getting ovarian cancer. When I got the results of that test, I wanted to be, prudent about making my decisions because these are really big decisions, especially when you're in your 30s. The possibility of not being able to have children, and having to get your ovaries out are extremely taxing and, as you can imagine, stressful. So I wanted to get a second opinion because I did test BRCA2 positive through Myriad. When I asked for a second opinion, they said that, in fact, I couldn't get a second opinion because only one company runs the test. And I didn't think that could be possible, really, because how could only one company run a test like that? But they said, yeah, in fact, Myriad is the only company. Shortly after that, I had to start making my decisions based on the Myriad test and was contacted by the ACLU through a referral that asked if I wanted to go ahead and join this lawsuit in 2009.
Now, explain to people the technicals, because I've talked to a lot of medical doctors. They say now they're coming out with a blood test that shows markers that cancer is in you, but then, of course, most people are getting cancer every week, and your immune system's defeating it. What you had going on was different, if I'm correct.
Sure.
So explain this to us.
Sure. Basically, it's a genetic predisposition. This means that it's passed on from a family member to family member. Generally, you have a 50-50 chance of passing it on to a child. And so I had breast cancer in my family through my grandmother and a second cousin and also my aunt. And so when you do have it in your family, generally they have you test for it pretty quickly. The reason is, if you do have a genetic predisposition, that means you have a higher likelihood in many instances of actually getting breast cancer or getting ovarian cancer. That weighs heavily in your decisions about whether to get a lumpectomy, a single mastectomy, or a double mastectomy.
So to be clear, you didn't have cancer yet, but you had a very good chance of getting it, and so now the medical system is recommending that you have those parts removed? No,
I actually had been tested for cancer, and I tested positive for cancer.
Okay.
And so they did a lumpectomy initially, and the margins weren't clear. What that means is that there's a good chance I was going to have a mastectomy on that side.
That was going to come back.
That's exactly what the test indicates. There's a very high likelihood of it coming back.
God, I just care so much about my mother, my wife, my daughters. And this breast cancer, as you know, is just exploding. It's just horrific. But I'm sorry, getting back to the issue here. Now, so then you couldn't get a second opinion. You just had to believe them. That's a bedrock of medical history. Going back to the Greeks is the second opinion, but it's only one company.
Well, Alex, and here's the really bad kicker, is that there are other laboratories out there that can run the test. The technology exists. It's that they had a patent on the gene itself. Because the technology exists, there are universities out there, et cetera, that can actually run the test. But what was happening is that Myriad would slap a cease and assist letter to them stating we have the patent, and they'd slap their arm and say you cannot run these tests.
Yeah, let's be clear here. They're saying this human gene's in humans. We've gone and patented that gene, so now no one can go look at it. And what if the company decided to shut down? What if they do? I mean, this is the control. This is turning humans into pure, absolute objects. Are you aware of the 39-year global plan taking blood from babies at birth? Even CBS News has reported, and giving it to these companies under the table?
Yeah.
Man, they are evil. They even get our blood and do this, and then you try to go get a gene therapy, and they say, sorry, we've patented that as well. This is outrageous.
Think about this. Only one laboratory in our country has banked all of our breast cancer data.
Well, you know why? They don't want you looking at bisphenol A and stuff, and why it's triggering all this. Because even if you're predisposed, and when the bisphenol A hyperfeminizes women and then feminizes men, and it accelerates the aging in those cells, and that's one of the big reasons medical doctors have told us that's happening. Have you ever read into bisphenol A and what it's doing to women?
Yeah. Very, very, very interesting. Very interesting. The other thing that I wanted to mention is I actually have a group of breast cancer survivors of over 24,000 that follow me online. And essentially, I get emails and calls all the time from women who are stuck in a queue waiting for funding to even get this test.
Unbelievable. So it's a form of rationing already, and this is so evil. I want to talk more about your lawsuit and where it's going on the other side, and some of the horror stories of these other women. Genae Girard is our guest. We'll tell you about her book as well. On the other side, I'm Alex Jones. Genae Girard is our guest. Leave it to me to flub names. Continuing now, for people that just joined us, recap the magnitude of this. One company jacking up the price. People are in waiting lists. They can't get access. You can't get a second opinion. And people say, well, that's free market. No. They went and patented the gene. And so from what I've seen in research, now when other companies go out and do their own discovery of the gene, which is humankind's property, then they're saying, well, you can't do a new therapy with that gene, so this actually stops progress because we own the test on that gene. I mean, this is like saying I own the color blue, or I own sunlight, or I own water, or it's falling from the sky. I mean, it is such an insane power grab. Tell us about the lawsuit and where you're going with this.
Well, essentially, it started in the district court, and we won in the district court level. And then it went to the Court of Appeals, where it got overturned 2-1, with the judges.
Wow.
And, obviously it's very frustrating for me, but also all women out there. This test is not inexpensive. It's about $3,600. And so they believe that, and because only Myriad has it, it's a monopoly, they believe that if this was overturned, that all laboratories could test if they wanted to, and the price would drop to about $150. And so all women could afford it. So as it stands right now, there's too many women that can't afford it, and cancer is really not something you can mess around with on a time element.
Well, the United States was built on monopolies not being allowed. Yeah, but since the robber barons in the last 140 years, that's all they do. As John D. Rockefeller, the founder of the family, said, competition is a sin. And this is just outrageous. And of course, as you know, I'm sure you've researched this now, there are so many other companies who are going out and patenting genes and gene therapies and things. And a lot of times getting our blood samples and then saying they even own that particular protein combination that is individual to you. And you go in to get a gene therapy, and they go, sorry, it's going to be $1 million. This company, Gwibblesnap, they own it.
Right. Yeah, it's crazy. Within my 60 Minutes interview, I listened to a number of genetic scientists talk about the horrible repercussions of this and how it's going to simply retard so many areas of research, like deafness and blindness and all sorts of different disease that they're trying to, move forward in finding cures for. It's just horrible. I mean, but when you're actually in the trenches, and let me explain something, Alex, this is a really difficult thing to explain to people. It's not a 2-minute conversation. A lot of political, activism and so forth, people get on board and it's rah, rah, rah. This is one of those things where when I talk about it in the public, and I'm so glad you're doing this interview, is that people don't realize how it's going to impact them directly. And it is a kind of a scientific, difficult concept, but on the flip side, when you're in the trenches and you're actually having to make decisions, life or death decisions, based on one company actually having a monopoly on a part of your body, it really changes your outlook.
No, I mean, it's very simple. Monsanto creates a GMO crop that infects and takes over crops in the same family, and then they have courts rule that you have trespassed and stole from them when it's admitted they contaminated you. And in this case, they're going in, identifying building blocks of the human body, saying that they have now discovered it, like Spain discovering, the Americas and planting a flag, and then saying, no one can ever touch this. We will deploy and develop only what we want with this gene. It is like saying, well, we patented the genes for the eye. Now no one can do any treatments for the eye. We own eyes. And it's just total evil.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. I'm not sure where this suit is going to go. We just got the ruling back, which was 105 pages of, just amazing banter back and forth, but we don't even know what's going to happen at this point and what's going to happen. We haven't even had our conference call with our lawyers yet from the ACLU to find out, what direction this is going to go.
Well, I got to warn you, I've seen the ACLU do some good work, but any big organization gets political, and I've seen them drop the ball before in key cases with some bad precedent being created. But I want to come back and talk about some of the horror stories from the tens of thousands of women that follow your work. I would imagine, I'm guessing Twitter will give out all the different websites. There's some other good news, though. Court, organic farmers can sue conventional GMO farmers who pesticides trespass. We'll be right back. Genae, before we get into some of the horror stories, so folks can get together and so women facing this scourge, this plague of breast cancer from the GMO and the bisphenol A and all the rest of it, it's just exploding off the charts, ladies and gentlemen. But it's all part of globalism, all part of the New World Order. Give us some of the websites. Tell us about the publications. Tell us about the work you're doing.
Sure. I actually wrote a breast cancer book called Off the Rack, Chronicles of a 30-something single breast cancer survivor. And it's just a humorous, ironic, look at what it's like to go through treatment. And it's one of the first funny books out there that helps women have a little bit of humor and seriousness going through this. Secondly, I have a website called Beyond the Booby Trap, BOOBIE. And my community on Facebook is about 24,000, and I get about 2.1 million interactions per month on there between breast cancer survivors. The Facebook site is facebook.com/beat, BEAT, breast cancer. And that's where most of the action occurs, where we have all of our communication and disseminate between each other drug interactions, surgery information, etc. It's a pretty tight bond.
Well, it just makes me so angry when I think about what's happening to women in our country and the persecution. Go through, for folks, some of the reports you're getting.
Sure. I had one woman in a very rural county who didn't have insurance. She had been laid off from her job for actually getting breast cancer. She had trouble even doing her work. She was laid off. She had breast cancer in her family, and it was suggested to her by a local clinic to go ahead and get the genetic test run, but she couldn't afford it because she didn't have insurance. Of course, it was $3,600. So she asked what her options were, and her options were to wait in a queue for public funds to be allocated towards her or to not get the test at all. And, of course, when you have breast cancer in your family and you have a diagnosis, you really need to get on the ball and figure out what you need to do to protect yourself and make the right decision. So to have her wait in a queue is absolutely ridiculous. Secondly, there was a woman that was actually with me on the 60 Minutes interview where they didn't, Myriad did not accept her insurance. So they have the right to deny insurance, yet they're the only company out there that runs the test.
Well, it's simple. The way our system is set up, A, you can't have a monopoly, but B, you can have the patent, but then you have to license it to companies. And you can charge your fee, but you've got to license it, but they're not doing that. And that's the creme de la creme of corruption right there. I thought, whoa, I didn't know that. They can even refuse you if they want. I mean, this is insane. You know, they have debates about we've got to give poor people free cell phones. You got to fry their brain so everybody can, you know, pay for their brain cancer surgery. And the illegal aliens get all their babies paid for, the anchor babies. But citizens of this country have insurance and go to them and they say, no, we don't accept your insurance. I mean, that is a death sentence for many people.
I know. It's absolutely ridiculous. You know, here, our health care system wants us to be an active participant. They want us to get involved in our diagnosis and to have every piece of the puzzle to be able to make an educated decision. And yet we have a monopoly on this piece of such a major part of our decision-making. You can imagine a woman having to get her ovaries out and not having the peace of mind to get a second opinion on that when, you know, it could determine whether or not you're going to have children. I mean, come on. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous.
Well, and as you were saying earlier, there's so many other cases of all of this, so many other. I mean, you could just type in genes patented or blood samples used to create gene patent. And I'm glad that you knew about that because I was talking about it 16 years ago when I was sent documents when I first got on air because they store them for quite a few states, the different regional storage facilities down in San Antonio, and it's a Department of Defense overall program, but it's at a private university, UT San Antonio. They store my blood sample when I was born in Dallas, everybody. And they say, oh, it's a health department mandated, as if the hospital couldn't do their own blood test. We send this blood sample off, and really what they're doing is taking that, running your genetic sequencing, selling it to companies. It is just, and it shows the secretive continuity of agenda, and we're just now learning about it. And they literally see us as animals who have no right to our own bodies and are really just there to be fed upon. It's incredible. I mean, obviously, you can't patent electricity. You could patent the processes or different systems of sending it out or metering it or controlling it. You can't patent basic systems, things that already exist, like our genes. I mean, I could see, quote, they'll say, well, we're patenting the gene test, but again, that's just recognizing the gene. And from what I've read on this case, it doesn't matter if a company develops another way of doing it. They're saying we own that gene now.
Yeah. I guess what they're saying, or what the court ruled, is that they have the ability, Myriad, to identify, remove, and isolate DNA from a cell. That's how they get around it. So, and the judge that disagreed with the case said that's the same thing as plucking a leaf from a tree. It still is a piece of something that existed in nature. And, so I don't know. I'm not sure where it's going to go, but what I really would love to see is this get overturned and that the monopoly goes away and that all women can afford to get the test to protect themselves and to also have this data not banked in one company so that we can further research breast cancer and move closer to finding a cure and something that can
Well, that's the other big issue. These big mega companies, many of them have been caught, they don't want cures. They want treatments because there's more money in that. And we know most of the real scientific advances, we're always hearing about a cure for this, cure for that. That's all shelved because the establishment does not want life extension systems being given to the general public. Ms. Girard, I really want to thank you for joining us today. And we will continue to follow your case as it develops. But by educating the public about issues like this, there will be an outcry, and we will end up in the end defeating Big Pharma, because in most cases, these companies, I mean, it's like Bayer Pharmaceutical got caught and convicted in French court, but it turned out it was happening all over the world for a decade, knowingly getting, buying blood from the different organizations that collect it, where all these well-meaning people go in and give blood. Then it turns out, end up selling most of it. It's not given out to folks when they really need it. It's sold to a big pharma, and Bayer knowingly would just not even test it. They would just mix all the blood together, knowing it's a lot of homeless folks and drug addicts that are giving blood. They would mix it all together and create blood platelet drugs like Factor VIII, ship it out knowing it was full, every ampule of hepatitis A, B, and C, and HIV, a death sentence worldwide for hundreds of thousands, and it came out that they knew and just didn't care. I mean, that is beyond evil. But because it's done medically, it's kind of cute. Oh, you're gonna die of hepatitis now. You're going to die of AIDS now. It's okay. The CEOs needed the money. They're good people. And since it was done by them, it's okay. The only country to convict them was France. Everywhere else they said, you're allowed to do this. Bill Clinton was involved, allowing in prisons people they knew had HIV. They'd sell them the drugs and I had the head doctor from the prison on. They firebombed his office, firebombed the Hemophiliac Society the same night up in Canada to get at the documents when the doctor came on the show and said this was all going on. And later the whole blood scandal came out. But people need to stop being naive. Stop being naive. And realize Big Pharma grew out of the eugenics lobby in the last 100 years and sees us as animals. And on average, I don't know about this company in particular, but think all of this is very, very cute. It was good having you on, and I hope folks will get your book and get it out to everybody we know because it's such important work. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me on, Alex.
You bet. Good to have you with us.